Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Ryan Patton. This week, I'm stoked to welcome Will Putney from Fit For An Autopsy to the podcast. Fit For An Autopsy will release Oh What the Future Holds, their 6th full-length LP, this Friday, January 14th, on Nuclear Blast Records. Will talks about the hardcore scene in New Jersey, Fit's formation and transformation over the years, including why he stepped away from touring with the band, his work as a producer and label owner with Graphic Nature, and his side project, End. We managed to talk about a wide array of topics over a short period of time, and I'm grateful Will was willing to talk while he was quarantined with COVID. Make sure you pre-order Oh What the Future Holds. A link is in the show notes. Enjoy this week's chat with Will Putney. I wish you were feeling better.
All good. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So you were out with End?
Yeah, I had a couple shows with End this week. We did a little run on the East Coast and did the ETID Christmas show.
Oh, nice. How are shows right now? I've not been out since shows have come back, but I imagine it's weird because I imagine I don't know, some percentage of the audience is like, am I going to go to a show on a Tuesday night and potentially get COVID?
Yeah, it's definitely weird. There's definitely I think there's hesitation to go to a show, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think when you tour, it's funny, we were talking about this weekend, more socially aware, leaning bands tend to have less good of turnouts right now, you know? I think people might be more conscious and stuff. It's we did a bunch of stuff Stick to Your Guns and Straight from the Path. And it's the fans of those bands are probably a little more cautious than if it was, some other band, I'll say. But yeah, it were the kids that were there were excited and the shows they weren't bad by any means, but it's you can just tell there's a vibe that stuff isn't all okay yet, you know?
Yeah. I'm there will come a show where I will feel comfortable going out and with the exposure risk, but right now I'm I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was oh, I'm comfortable. This will be fine. We're safe, and then I'm vaccinated. So is my whole band, and we'll hang out in green rooms. And I still came home and got sick. So
it's a bummer. Speaking of End, Jay used to cut my hair when I lived in Philly. So
oh, nice. Yeah, I got to see his barbershop for the first time this week. It was cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So let's go back, man. You grew up in New Jersey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been here my whole life, basically. I was in Central Jersey as a kid, and then I moved up by the city, and now I live in the woods. But I've always been a Jersey human, so it's been my whole life.
It's awesome. What was growing up like for you?
It was cool, pretty normal family scenario as a kid, and no complaints really. I got into music pretty early age, and I've definitely I think around my first job is when I really met a lot of people early in high school around New Jersey that were sort of into the hardcore and metal scene and stuff. And that was sort of my introduction to that world at an earlier age, and was very fortunate. When I was younger, there were a lot of venues in New Jersey that put on shows, so I was exposed to a lot of music in different subgenres and stuff early on, and I just was always at shows as a kid, and it just all snowballed from there.
That's awesome. What was the thing that got you into music?
I don't really know what got me into music. I think what got me into, I know, like, as a kid growing up, my parents listened to like really soft music. They weren't like big classic rock people either. It was like a really light Rod Stewart, Elton John, Neil Diamond, like that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe being punished with that over and over again as a kid, what kind of pushed me to more extreme stuff, I don't really know, but my like trajectory was like, I was a product of MTV, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, and I really got into like hip hop at a really young age. You know, I was like, I would go to my record store and buy like West Coast, like Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg tapes and things like that. And like try to hide the parental advisory stick with my parents and things like that. And then like that turned into, you know, finding grunge and all the alternative stuff in the 90s, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains and bands like that, and Nine Inch Nails. And then you know, Metallica, Pantera, all the classic metal bands, sort of. That was the next step for me. And then as a kid, like I said, I was, you know, the friends that I had met where I worked, we were into this hardcore scene in New Jersey. So like around 14 years old, maybe, I went to my first hardcore show. And then that sort of opened up a whole new door, you know, of music for me. And that was like kind of it from there. I really lived in that world for years and years.
Yeah.
That's kind of like my musical path of the stuff as a kid.
That's cool. At what point did you start playing guitar?
I probably picked up guitar like around that same time I started going to hardcore shows. Because I was really into, you know, it was like that was the first time I was really exposed to people I knew that were in bands, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I could do this too, I guess. So around like 13 or 14, I picked up a guitar and took some like local lessons, and then just like tried to self-teach myself a lot of stuff. But I started a band like pretty early on. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just playing with my friends and figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it easy to be, I mean, a lot of venues, easy to get into the local scene and like have a band and immediately start playing?
I feel like it was. I think we weren't very good, but we very quickly were able to start playing shows. I think we had a lot of friends, so it helped that we could like bring people to our shows, even if we sucked, you know? Yeah. But yeah, we wound up opening a lot of like the metal and hardcore touring, you know, proper touring acts that were coming through. We wound up pretty quickly like opening a lot of the shows around here and stuff, and had a good run for the scale of what it was as a kid, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in high school, touring shows came through and you could like be one of the 12 local bands opening at like the VFW hall.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, Zayo's coming, let's get on the bill or whatever.
Yeah. It was fun. In New Jersey was great because we were this like bridge between all the tri-state area shows, you know?
Yeah.
So if a band was coming up for a weekend or whatever and wanted to do Philly and New York, and we were always like the stop in between. So we got pretty much everything passed through here. Some of the earlier bands I was in was like some of the original members of Fit For An Autopsy. We started as kind of a hardcore band. You know, we had practices, and we were just trying to. We didn't have a band name or anything. We had just reformed from, you know, the departure of a couple other local bands, and we were just trying to write hardcore songs and have fun. And it originally was going to sound like Terror, you know.
Yeah.
And then we hooked up with Nate Johnson. We met him at a show. He was looking to do another band. We were a big fan of him. He has a crazy voice and came from Deadwater Drowning and Through the Eyes of the Dead, all these metal bands that we really liked. And he wanted to do like a new metal band. And we kind of switched gears and we're like, all right, well, we like this stuff too. And now we have an opportunity to get this singer who's awesome. So let's do that now. So we kind of like flipped it. And like the first music that we wrote and put together was this demo that we basically like made songs to show Nate to be like, hey, you want to sing over this, you know? And he's like, sure. And he wound up doing it. And that was like our first introduction as a band.
That's awesome. Where'd that name come from?
It was, I don't really know for sure. I think it was one of the guys we were jamming with. It was his other band that had just broken up and we needed a name and they had never really gotten off the ground. And we are like, oh, maybe it's just that name. Yeah, it wasn't. And I don't think we ever had the idea. I think we kind of jacked it from a band that never happened. And at the time we were like, yeah, we didn't know. We just like didn't put much thought into it. In hindsight, we probably should have thought of a name that was it rolled off the tongue a little easier, but yeah. It is what it is now. I always tell people Death was taken when they ask where the name came from. So.
Yeah. You're like, that sounds badass. That totally fits the music. Let's go with it.
I mean, it did fit what we were doing. So I'm like, all right, I guess nowadays maybe makes less sense, but it is what it is.
Yeah. You guys like Fit is often labeled as like deathcore. To me, like deathcore to like metalcore, it all kind of comes from a similar place. Like, was that something you guys were conscious of ever, or was it just like that's just what fans label it and who cares?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, earlier, like in our career, the music we were writing probably lined up more with some stuff from that world. You know, I mean, our first record was on Black Market, and that earlier wave of stuff, which I think kind of pioneered deathcore, like stuff like the Red Chord and, you know, From Second Story Window. And there were a lot of releases in that era at that time that we were kind of drawing influences from and stuff. And then the band's kind of morphed over the years into something that feels like pretty far away from what modern deathcore is. Obviously we share like similarities, but to me, it's always been like we don't really label what the hell it is, I guess. Yeah. You know,
it's just more metal.
Yeah, it's just like a dark, aggressive music. And I don't know. Like we're lucky enough where we've been able to do deathcore stuff and then do stuff out of that world. And, you know, I don't care what it's called. If people like it and listen to it, it's cool, you know?
Yeah. You guys have like slowly risen bigger labels each, you know, as you've grown, like Black Market to E1 to Nuclear Blast. Now, like, has that progression been like, as you've gotten bigger and been around for a long time, do the labels like matter as much in what they bring to the table? Or is it just like, this is who's going to put out a record now?
I think it always matters who you're working with, you know. At the level where our bands were in each cycle, we've always had a good working relationship with our labels and stuff. The move to Nuclear Blast was mainly to expand the band in Europe a little more, because I feel like for the style of music we play, we're probably more at home there, you know. And we see Europe is one of our favorite and best markets, and Nuclear Blast is just such a foothold there. It just made a lot of sense to start to get into that world. Plus, I've worked with the guys at Nuclear Blast for years, making records and stuff, and just like love that team. And they kind of stay out of our way and let us do exactly what we want to do. And it's just a really good fit. And, you know, and then we did have, you know, the E1 team was awesome too. We've never had a bad label experience. So luckily, we're not one of those bands that has this big falling out or something goes. Like the people we've worked with have always been great to us. So we're appreciative of all the label and staff and everyone that's ever worked on our stuff.
Always tried to move them way out of the
What was it like, the process of losing Nate and kind of the replacement to get to Joe and having that transition as a band? Like, was there ever a moment you're like, maybe we'll call it quits now or rebrand?
Yeah, it was pretty scary because, I mean, for us, Nate was one of our like favorite singers.
Mhm.
And when he didn't want to do music anymore, it was definitely like a confusing time. We were touring with fill-ins. Like we had a lot of full-time touring, like the biggest opportunities in our life that we didn't want to cancel. At that point, it seemed like if we bailed on all of this worldwide touring and our first opportunities to do things like Europe and Australia and stuff, that it would have been like the end of the band,
Mm-hmm.
So we were like kind of scrambling and touring with like fill-in guys and people who we knew like weren't going to cut it to be in our band, but we just had to do it anyway. So it was just a really stressful time because we like couldn't find somebody. And then Tim in our band, just out of the blue one day, is like, oh wait, I think I might know a guy. Like this is months into doing these tours and stuff. He's like, oh, the guy I grew up with in Long Island, like he's pretty good. Check him out. And we're like, as soon as we heard him, we're like, how could you not have told us this earlier? Like what? So once we heard that dude and we had him like audition on a song, it was like within a week he was at the studio with us. We're like, oh, there he is. So it went from like, oh my God, this is the end. We're never going to figure this out. And then like a week later, we're like recording a record with Joe,
Yeah.
So it was pretty down to the wire. Like we were at the point where I was home, the band was on tour. I was home working on a record. And by the time that tour was over, we were kind of supposed to finish the album with a singer that didn't exist at the time. I had a whole bunch of music written and recorded and a whole bunch of lyric ideas going. And I was like, we just don't have a guy. I don't know what to do, So it was like, once we got Joe, it all fell into place like really, really fast. And it worked out great.
That's awesome. Yeah. Around that time Nate left, you kind of switched to stop touring, being studio only. What led to that decision?
I kind of just hit that fork where I realized like I couldn't do both things full time, At the time, like my producer career was definitely busy and I was getting all these like great opportunities to work with cool bands and stuff. And the band was also getting like full-time touring opportunities where it was like I kind of had to choose a lane. Like I wasn't going to be able to do both things. And at that point, I was like, we were getting fill-ins for me when I couldn't make certain shows or tours or things like that. So we decided like, what if we just had a 6th permanent member that was a touring guy? We found Tim. He's awesome at guitar. He's considerably better than me, where it was like, and he's just like a road guy. He loves it. He like lives for touring and being on the road. And it was like this scenario where it's like, all right, you're just in the band. Like, we're not going to do this fill-in thing and have to sort it out every time. We just have a permanent band member, And once we were able to find him, it made it like, it didn't matter that I wasn't there anymore at all. It's like, this guy's great and he keeps up. He's can play laps around me. And it was just like a big relief. And then everybody felt comfortable with the idea, like, okay, I could just stay home now. We've got this problem solved,
Yeah.
And it's a cool dynamic because it lets us, multitask, and I could be at home getting things done while they're on the road. So it's definitely been like, it's a bit of a weird band situation, but it actually has tons of advantages. And it's been really smooth sailing ever since we made that switch.
Yeah, you can be back, and when you have time, you're writing and working on new material, and they come back and it's like stuff is done already, and it's not this process of starting from scratch off the road.
Yeah, it's definitely like helped us accelerate. We've put out 6 records in 10 years, like, so it's plus like the split and singles and other things. So it's definitely helped us like create more material at a faster pace, which is cool.
Of
you guys released Sea of Tragic Beasts October of 2019. So there's probably some touring done in there, but like, did you see COVID impact that record cycle a lot? I mean, I'm sure it affected you as a producer and like not getting to tour 2020. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, it was kind of a nightmare for the band. Like we got our headliner in, which was awesome. And then we got one European tour in, and then we had to cancel 6 or 7 of the best tours we could ever in our lives on the books. You know, we had all these awesome opportunities and things that never even got announced that just went by the wayside. And it was initially pretty scary for the band. You know, we got one day into a tour in America, and then the entire tour got scrapped. So all of the setup for that tour, you know, renting stuff, crew, all the merch, like we just got left with this huge bill. And like, it was really scary to only be able to do one show and then have to deal with that fallout. But luckily, like the fans of the band came through really hard. We, you know, were able to like get back on our feet pretty quick, selling merch and stuff. And it would, after that initial sort of chaos and the, you know, the downside of losing all the tours, it actually worked out pretty good for the band. Everybody got to like recharge. We, you know, there are dudes in my band who have like side things, you know, Pat's a tattoo artist, Joe cuts hair, like everyone sort of was able to like lean into some full-time work, make some money, relax at home. And we got to spend a lot of time on a new record. It definitely took the wind out of the sails for the Sea of Tragic Beasts, you know, and we realized like 6 months into the pandemic, like we're just going to have to do a new one, you know, like we can't go back out there on a record that's been out for 2 years. And, you know, I probably sped up the process of us getting to another record, but in hindsight, it's cool because we all think, you know, the new record is our favorite record. And now we're just excited to get back out there and play this, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Before we talk about the new record, let's talk about Graphic Nature. What got you into producing?
I was always like, obviously I was always interested in music. I just didn't ever really see like a career path, I guess, when I was younger. Like I was in bands and I booked a lot of shows in New Jersey. I was like doing local promoter stuff, and I was taking some music classes in school for fun and doing some like college radio internship stuff for fun. And I had a little record label. Like I always had all these things where I was involved in music, but I just never saw a career in it. It was always just a hobby, you know? Mm-hmm. And I wound up hooking up with Machine, the record producer, who he shared like a building with a professor's like studio that I was just like taking a recording class for fun. I didn't like at the time. I was barely even interested in recording. You know, I just like didn't know what a record producer was. I didn't know how real records actually got made, you know? Mm-hmm. And Machine had a kid and he needed like an assistant intern for a little bit to kind of like hang out at the studio, babysit a band while he had some home time and stuff. So I got hooked up with him because a professor at my school knew I was into like the music that he was making. So he put me up for it. And that was like kind of those first couple weeks that I spent in that studio was like this crazy whirlwind of like, it opened up all this information for me. And I saw so much cool stuff about the, you know, just the whole career of being a record producer and what goes into it, what it entails, that I was like, I immediately became like super interested in it. I was like, oh, now I can kind of see a way I can make music for a living and like do this as a career. And I kind of just never left, you know? Yeah. I just stayed there, learned from Machine, started doing my own projects. And like that all just kind of built on itself over the years, where, you know, I just eventually broke off and became my own guy. But, that moment was really like the first time my eyes were ever open to it as like a possible career thing, you know?
Yeah. When you started out on your own, was it easy to kind of like use your connections from the band to like talk to people and get people into the studio?
Well, I think the band actually started a little later, like the first
okay.
show that we did with Fit, I had already had the studio.
Oh,
and
wow.
it was
Okay.
like, so initially I was recording some friends' bands and some local band buddies and stuff that I had known from just being in bands and stuff. But I think I was actually working there for a little bit before we tried to do Fit for an Autopsy. So it wasn't too long after I started working there, but yeah, it was like I kind of used my downtime at the studio to work on that stuff back in the day. So it was the parallels of the band and the studio definitely started around the same time. And I think over the years, as Fit's grown, it's definitely led to people being interested in working with me because they're interested in what the band does or how those records sound. But initially, it was me just kind of fending for myself there.
How'd the label side get connected with Equal Vision?
I had just worked with Dan for years, and I had always, we have a really great working relationship. I enjoyed making records for him. We share a lot of similar interests in music and stuff. And I'd always kind of like talked about the idea of like, I wish I could find a home for some younger bands that, are a little out of the box. And he just kind of was into the idea of letting me use kind of Graphic Nature and running some of the stuff through EcoVision system with like an imprint. So we've over the years, like it's not an extremely active label, but over the years I'll call him and be like, I got something, I really want to do this. And he lets me, he kind of gives me the reins on some of the creative stuff, and kind of lets me bring in some bands that I think are important. And we've had some pretty good success and put out some really cool records with it.
Yeah. How'd you get connected with the Hopesfall guys to do their re-releases and the new record?
Hopesfall is just a band that I really loved back in the day. I didn't think they got a fair shake at the end of their career. Like I know they had some label troubles, and as they had switched into like what they kind of are sonically now, things kind of went sour for them. Not to their fault, and when I heard that they were interested in maybe picking it up again or reissuing some old stuff, like I kind of just reached out to them and was like, hey, I have this thing. I totally get where the band is like sonically. I would love to like just be a part of releasing some of this. And I love those guys. They're super sweet. They're fun to work with. And we've been able to put new music out to them with them that was well received, and a lot of their reissue stuff like really sold out really fast. And we had like a really good streak working with those guys. And I know we've got more plans in the future with them, so it's very exciting. So N was like, it's kind of like just a passion project thing where I've always wanted to do a band like that. It's kind of my preferred style of heavy music, and I just like didn't really know a lot of people coming up or in the local scene that were like doing that around here. And I over the years I've been lucky where I've like worked with really cool artists. I've become friends with a lot of guys who share similar interests. So I was like, what if I just kind of hit up some of the guys I know that I like working with and see if they want to do a band, Yeah. Brendan, who sings for Counterparts, like, we both share like a love for a lot of the stuff we're influenced by in End. And I was like, hey, if I put this band together, would you sing for it? And he's like, yeah, sure. So, Greg from Misery Signals, I had a chance to work with. I knew he was all about this stuff, and Jay, who came from like Blacklisted and Reign Supreme, like it was a very good friend and has been for years. Like, also, I knew he was a fan, so I was like, basically a lot of people who knew of each other but didn't really know each other. I sort of was like the link to it all. And I was like, yeah, trust me, you're going to like these guys. We all like the same stuff. So like the first day we all met was at the studio where it's like, all right, this is the band, you know?
Yeah.
And everybody was like, they're, you know, within a day or two, it was like, oh, I met you here and you were on tour with this guy and this guy. It, like everybody connected their paths, you know, like very, very quickly. So it was funny to watch like all my friends, new friendships like bloom from this project. But yeah, it's like, it's such a pleasure doing because it's like all my favorite dudes, you know, who are all also happen to be really cool musicians who also like everything I like. So it's like we have the most fun doing it. And it's exactly the kind of band that I'd want to do at this point in my life, where it's like it's no stress. We can do what we want when we want. Luckily, people are into it, so it's like the offers and opportunities we get are really fun. And yeah, we just have a blast doing it.
Yeah. I remember listening to Splinters last year, and just like that record makes me want to run through walls. It's incredible.
I'm really happy with the way that came out. Definitely, to me, it was like I finally felt like I did this thing that I wanted to do. Like I got it out of my brain, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've never had the opportunity to do that kind of band, so that was really like finally started to feel like realize like cool, I did it. We can do this thing, you know. And yeah, this year, like 2 minutes before I got on the phone for this interview, we just announced our first like US tour. Nice. So we're actually going to like tour a little, which I haven't done in a long time, but I'm actually looking forward to it.
Well, Fit for an Autopsy, Oh, What the Future Holds, your 6th full-length record out January 14th on Nuclear Blast. You said you kind of rushed the process to writing this one a little in COVID. You said you took some time. Were there things you wanted to do or try on this record that were different, or just like, did you want to just really hone in and define the Fit sound?
I always go into these like, I don't really know what's going to come out of it, you know? Like there's definitely, when I sit down to write Fit records, there's definitely like moods and ideas and like general themes. I'm like, all right, I want to try to get this kind of vibe or this, or I want a lyric I want like this content, but I never really know, you know. On this one, because we had more time, it was really nice. I actually got to write more songs for this record than I ever had, you know. So I worked through like a lot of stuff, and to me, like it was really fun to just try some new stuff with the music and just see what was going to work, what wasn't going to work, you know. It was fun to like learn to like, okay, I think we can live in this style. I think we can pull this kind of thing off. Like there's more, I think, riskier stuff for the band on this record, and also more like fleshed out, longer songs. Like it was just like a fun, easy process, you know, to like experiment and play with new songs this time, because we weren't limited to really any timeline. This is like the first record I think we've ever done where it wasn't like in between tours or anything like that. So I got to have more sessions with like Joe, and we broke it up into little bits instead of like trying to do it all at once. So it was cool to like go away from it and come back to it and just chip away at a record. But yeah, like I said, I never really know what the end result's going to be when we go into these things. There was just, this one was like, really, let's just see what happens, you know? So it's always cool to do that and then just kind of work through and find what you like.
Yeah. Yeah. Why the name, Oh, What the Future Holds? Is that any COVID related or just a general sense or theme that's on the record?
Yeah, there's no real COVID content, I guess, on one. I wasn't really interested in that song this time or that theme. I think there's like a bigger picture to it all, and this is probably just a part of that bigger story, you know. But you know, we're obviously not a very positive band, and there's always sort of the dark, you know, looming nature of where the world is headed. So I feel like where all the lyrical content was going and stuff, that title sort of symbolized a lot of the things that we talk about, and sort of the direction of the intention of what we're saying and the direction of where the world's heading and stuff. So had a cool art concept with it. And I just felt like it was just an easy one that kind of summed it all up for me.
Gotcha. Yeah. On the single Far From Heaven, you're basically like, yeah, the world's kind of fucked right now.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of know what you're getting from us at this point. I feel like we've been covering a lot of the same subject matter for a while, which we probably will continue to do so. But I think lyrically on this one, you know, we kind of approached it like two ways, where there is like sort of this direct, like, sort of finger pointing on the attack style of like lyrics, where we can get into some of the things we're frustrated about. And then there's also like this sort of introspective side about like, okay, well, how does this affect you, you know, as a person? I feel like sometimes that stuff adds another layer to it, a little more weight. So it kind of bounces back and forth between those two. But Far From Heaven is definitely a little more direct in its message, for, you know.
That's cool. What's the future look like? Is you're not touring with Fit, but are they heading out on the road? You're heading out with End. Yeah,
Fit's got plenty of stuff next year. We've got a US tour January 5th to February 12th. And then in May, there's a European headliner. And then there's several more announcements too, just obviously waiting on some of the pandemic details and things to make sure we can play certain areas. But we've got a lot more international touring on the books. We're going to get back to, you know, Asia and Australia and Central America and South America. And we'll pretty much go everywhere again as soon as we're allowed to and as soon as it's safe. So we're expect like a pretty busy year from the band for sure.
That's cool. Is it tough to announce? Do you feel like it's still tough to announce? There's like a new variant out there, and you know, restrictions are always changing. Is it tough to be like, yeah, we're coming to oh no, sorry.
Oh, of course. I mean, we're still holding back on a few announcements to make sure things are safe and stuff. Obviously, I don't want to. It's a disservice to the fans to be like, oh, buy this ticket. Oh, wait, sorry, it's moving. Oh, you can't come that day. Sorry. You know, like we're trying to do our best to balance, like, okay, we do have to like get shows on the books because, you know, everything's got holds and shit. And if tours move, we sort of have to be in line to be able to move the tour. So it's like, we do have to book stuff, but we also are like, obviously we're not going to go out there and do shows if it's not safe for the fans that are coming. So we're staying on top of monitoring and doing our best to see like what the scenarios are like. And we would never put our crowds in any kind of real danger, you know? So we're trying to tour as safely and responsibly as possible. And if things don't feel good, obviously we will reschedule dates, you know, but right now it looks like, you know, we're hopeful that the stuff that we have on the books can go off without a hitch. And we're just keeping our eye out and trying to stay positive about being able to get back out there. I just appreciate everyone who checks it out. You know, I know like our band's definitely come a bit of a ways from what we sounded like in the beginning to what we're doing nowadays. So I'm always appreciative of the fans and kids who have been around for a while and kind of ride with us as we experiment and play with new things. So anyone who can gives the record a new listen, I'm always appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune. And now I'm learning as I listen along, and the wheels are turning, and I started a song. One good word and I'm gone. Oh, as the story grows, the more I want to know, the more I want to show you. As the story grows, as the story grows. You can create something lasting and great, something passionate and real. And I'll bring in my own good feelings, I'll sing it with meaning. Let's just attack it and never look back. It's wild and fantastic. All together at full power, we're so much better. What's that word?